My name is Marcus Opp. I'm an associate professor at the Stockholm School of Economics. I work in finance, and my research is on financial intermediation, and most recently I've been interested in the economics of socially responsible investing. So it is actually a myth that the stock market only cares about short-term profits. So if you look at any textbook, what the textbook would tell you is that the stock market values profits, or more accurately cash flows, from now until the future, and that's what every student is also taught. So just as an example of that, when you now look at the market valuation of Tesla versus Toyota, GM, Ford, Daimler, BMW, and Volkswagen, Tesla is roughly as much worth as all these companies together, despite making a tiny profit today. The reason is that the investors see large cash flows in the future. So the issue is not so much that the stock market only cares about today's cash flows. The problem is they only care about cash flows per se, but it's not necessarily the timing of cash flows. So the problem is, for example, if there's an externality that one activity that one company does, let's say ExxonMobil creates pollution, or some company treats its workers badly, then this isn't directly valued by stock market investors, and as a result unaccounted for. And these are the type of things that potentially cause a difference between what social welfare would want and what shareholder value dictates. So the difficult decisions are precisely those decisions where society could be made better off. Let's say we have lower carbon emissions, but this is at the expense of what shareholders want. Okay? Now there might be some decisions where society and shareholders basically have a win-win situation, where the shareholders see an opportunity to become greener, which makes the society better off, but also they make more money. These are easy decisions, but we don't need socially responsible investors to do that, because any financial investor is willing to take a decision that increases the profits, and as a nice side effect, you also get positive impact on society. Social responsible investing is basically an investment strategy that is not only accounting for financial cash flows, but is also concerned about environmental, social, or governance standards of the firm. So for example, emissions, how you treat your workers, or potentially diversity issues. The most common form of this socially responsible investing is essentially ESG funds, so standing for these words, environmental, social, and governance. And they invest in firms that do well according to certain metrics, these called ESG metrics, and they're produced by some firms which are similar to traditional rating agencies. So they rate a firm, are you doing well on these let's say environmental standards or not. Examples are Sustainalytics, Fitch, Morningstar, and MSCI. And then what these funds are doing, they invest in firms that do well according to these standards, and they don't invest in other firms. And this has been quite successful. So even during the Corona crisis, there has been a large inflow of roughly 70 billion in just in the last quarter towards these ESG funds. So it's a tremendous growth. But if we still compare ESG funds to funds that only care about financial performance, we currently have a ratio of 1 trillion investing in ESG funds to 41 trillion investing purely for financial reasons. So as an overall fraction of the stock market, it's still relatively tiny. So impact investing is not necessarily the same as socially responsible investing. It is I would consider it as a subcategory of socially responsible investing. So what is impact investing? Impact investing invests with the purpose of actually changing the behavior of a firm. Okay? So you invest in a particular firm so that the firm actually, let's say, produces lower emissions, that the firm treats its workers better, and so forth. So not all ESG investing is like that. In particular, if you, let's say, just say, I'm not going to invest in ExxonMobil, you could say you're doing something good for society, but in fact, when you start thinking about it, there is enough capital out there who's still happily investing in ExxonMobil. In fact, there's 41 trillion US dollars out there to happily invest in ExxonMobil. So you're not really hurting ExxonMobil, you're not really changing anything. So the question that we're asking, and this is relating to my own research, is under which conditions socially responsible investors can actually make a difference? And when does it actually lead to some real effect on firms? And in our paper, what we identify as the first thing is that an ESG fund needs to have a broad mandate. So what does a broad mandate mean? So a broad mandate means you can't just maximize financial performance. In fact, you need to account for externalities or social costs that are produced by the firm, regardless of whether you invest in the firm or not. So the idea is as follows. If you invest in ExxonMobil or not, you're still going to be affected by their emissions, right? So you can't just say, oh, I feel good about myself. I'm not investing in ExxonMobil, so I'm doing really something great for society. But the thing you need to consider, well, if I don't invest, someone else will invest. And who's the type of investor? It might be a purely financially driven investor, and in a way, you're not making the society better off. Now, the downside of having such a broad mandate is it will hurt you financially. And that's because the easy decisions, where there are win-win situations, where pollution goes up or pollution goes down and financial profits go up, they are already taken by financial investors. Financial investors are happy to take any decision that increases profits. So unfortunately, the decisions that remain to be made, which are the tough decisions, where society benefits, but the shareholder doesn't, those require socially responsible investors, but in order to get these changes to be done, you have to sacrifice financial performance. And unfortunately, when you look at the real world right now, this is not how ESG funds are marketed. They're kind of marketed as doing well by doing good. But there is not much evidence that you're doing financially really super well. But there's even less evidence that they're doing good in terms of affecting real firm outcomes. In fact, there's a recent legislation in the US that actually mandated all pension funds not to sacrifice financial performance for the sake of ESG standards, which in the language of our model means you can't have any impact. Okay? If you're not willing to take a hit on your financial performance, there's no way you're actually going to be able to actually change firm behavior. So long story short, we have seen tremendous growth in ESG investing over the past couple of years. And at this moment, it's still going to be, it's relatively small relative to overall financial investment in the overall economy. And we're still not quite sure what's going to be the total effect of ESG investing as these things are changing. But as of now, it seems that this broad mandate condition that we identify theoretically is not satisfied in reality, but it may well be as the whole industry is changing over the next 10 years.